Velocity, morning, peace, and blessings. All right, so Jupiter, MKS in the third house. What is Jupiter? Who is Jupiter? What is the third house? Why does Jupiter become MKS in the position? We're going to get into all that, right? Make sure if y'all find anything, I guess, of value of substance in this video to like and subscribe. You can definitely share it with somebody who might be interested into astrological topics as well. But yeah, get into it. So who is Jupiter, right? So Jupiter is the sage. Jupiter is guru. Jupiter is the wise man. Jupiter is the sannyasi. He's the prophet, the preacher, the shaman, the priest, the one who communes with God and is commissioned to show us the way back to true source consciousness, right? To pull us out of the cycles of deaths or the cycle of death and rebirth, or to pull us out of the repetitive darkness that we get ourselves into, right? To dispel illusion, to initiate us back into the light, or whatever the fuck you want to call it, right? All Jupiterian qualities and aspects, right? So, being this way, Jupiter is not concerned with or focused on worldly matters and attainments because he knows there is no true blessing or satisfaction within these things. He knows that attachment to these things can ultimately lead one to suffering and destruction, right? And Jupiter knows that the worldly appearance is impermanent and that the true existence is God. His faith is towards God. His faith is towards Jnana. His faith is towards truth. And this is what keeps him steadfast and sacrificial in his practices. This is what keeps him to observe his vows. This is what allows him the position of superior spiritual power and authority that he has, right? This is what makes it easy for Jupiter to gracefully overcome seemingly impossible obstacles and situations, and what gives him the ability to help others do so as well, right? Due to his sacred knowledge, due to his um, gyan in relation to truth, existence, reality, all that, right? So that's Jupiter in a nutshell, right? So, third house. Third house represents siblings. I'm just throwing out words, right? Third house represents siblings, friends, homies, hobbies, fun, drama, gossip, small talk, details, topics, small situations, adventure, quick responses, agility, and quick reflex in action, right? Third house represents competition, self-effort, taking karma into your own hands and doing something about a situation, regardless of what is advised, right? Regardless of what is right or wrong, right? Starting from scratch, hustling, getting it out the mud, using your cunning power of will to conquer a situation at the last minute, right? It represents repetition, lust, communication, using intellectual knowledge and your skill sets as weapons or things to make your life more convenient, right? So when it comes to the third house, it's not about right or wrong. It's not about fate or destiny. These are Jupiterian principles like destiny, fate, what the Lord got for me, or what is right, what is the right way, what is the Dharma. These are all Jupiterian qualities. What is truth? What is Satya? Jupiter. But it's not about that in the third house. You feel me? It's not about going with the tides of karma or standing by while some ancient prophecy is supposed to play out because you went against the grand poobah and you didn't kiss his feet in the past life and now this nigga curse you or some bullshit like that, right? It's not about that. Third house is about genuine self-expression and what you feel is the way, right? Regardless of what the rule books say. Going against the grain is the theme of the third house, right? Carving your own pathway in reality. Programming, self-research, data mining, scamming, breaking the law. Breaking the law that might actually need to be broken. Cutting the corner, finding the better and quicker solution, etc., etc. These are all pretty much qualities of the third house and whatnot, right? So, in a nutshell, these all contradict the natural qualities of Jupiter. So, How does Jupiter function when it's here? Right? Again, Jupiter, he's guru. He's linear. He's single-minded. He's truthful. He's very much so rooted in Dharma and spiritual law. He's focused on the straight and narrow way, like the Bible say. You know what I'm saying? The way to the kingdom of God, or whatever, is the path is straight and narrow. You feel me? It's no deviations. It's no detour. You know what I'm saying? It's no bullshit drama that can be contained within the third house or whatnot, seemingly, right? So Jupiter is the straight and narrow. In the third house, it's a house of trickery, a house of contradiction, a house of ambiguity in action, right? Sometimes the same thing don't always work for the same situation. Sometimes you got to switch it up, you know? Sometimes you have to improvise last minute. You have to, sometimes you got to know how to adapt to different environments and scenarios. Sometimes you got to know how to go against the script. You know, sometimes you got to lie on the application in order to get the job. You know, sometimes you got to lie in order to protect and save your own life, you know, or your family or whoever the fuck, you know. Sometimes you have to do things that may seem unethical or unreligious in order to really succeed and get by. And naturally, Jupiter doesn't like the qualities of this house and whatnot, right? It doesn't like the seemingly inconsistent nature of the third, doesn't like the lies. It's not interested in childish games or activities. Jupiter's not interested in dramas, gossips, competitions, comedy. It's not interested in knowing what was on Love and Hip Hop last night, or who won the football game, or the Tom Aspinall fight, or who out in the world getting a bitch fuck. You feel me? It's not interested in these things. These are things that often feel like major distractions that keeps one from the realization of the divine, or whatever you want to call it, right? So when Jupiter is here, it feels like he has to sacrifice his attention for the small, which can make him feel unsatisfied or feel like he's missing something or not truly getting the true spiritual soul fulfillment of life due to being in the wrong environment or around the wrong associations or whatnot, right? Um, it's difficult for Jupiter to really view these things or view the small because it finds them to be trivial. It finds them to be non essential, therefore purposeless and uninteresting. But the thing about the third, you can often learn some of the greatest life lessons through observation of dramas or comedy. You can often learn some of the greatest life lessons through everyday experiential interaction with your friends or with your homies, or through certain fights and competitions or certain shit that might seem like bullshit, etc. Right? It could actually, these can actually be great tools for furthering the wisdom, right? Jupiter is pious. He doesn't seek to cause harm. He's the sage, he's the sannyasi, he's all of these things or whatever. And when it comes to Jupiter being the third, the third, it again, it represents fights, skirmishes, competitions, doing your own self effort and finding your own way in life without advice or coaching from reputable persons or gurus or father or whatever. So when Jupiter is in the third, you feel me, it might be a thing of feeling like you wasn't properly taught or educated or given the right way of action like you may have believed you deserve to be, right? Jupiter in the third, it might can show a disconnect in the father some way, in some type of way, right? In the male chart at least, right? Jupiter in the third, if the pathway in the third house is too hard or requires too much effort, Jupiter will not persist. And it's not all bad when it comes to the third house. You feel me? With every MKS position, it definitely comes with, you know, great talents and abilities as well. So when Jupiter's in the third, it can give a person a lot of different ideas, actually. It can give a person a lot of different ideas in relation to knowledge or intellectual things and sorts like that, right? It can give you different ideas in relation to hustles or skill sets and strategies to succeed in life and fulfill one's desires. It can make a person very intelligent for real, and it can show that certain pathways or avenues to success may open up very easily for the person, especially if Jupiter is strong within the third house, right? It can show that life damn near kind of flows for them, or stuff is kind of just handed to them and whatnot, right? So it might not be a lot of effort or struggle for the person, but struggle builds character, effort builds character. You know what I'm saying? It builds self strength. You feel me? It builds the ability to become a warrior or a fighter, or the ability to really, make shit shake, make shit shake and motherfucking move or whatnot, right? So when it comes to Jupiter being the third house, it's like actually doing the work, actually fighting through the struggles of the third house. This is not the interest of Jupiter. Jupiter believes in flow and grace. You know what I'm saying? It believes in alignment, law of attraction. And it can feel if, he's facing some blockage or adversity within a worldly situation, then the lesson at hand might be to detach. So it might just let some shit go, or just, stop looking over there or whatever the fuck, right? When in reality, the lesson at hand might be to just keep putting in effort and to be more open to an alternative solution, to stepping outside of the quote unquote Dharma, or the quote unquote rule book or the law book, right? When Jupiter is in the third, you won't necessarily be seen as the toughest or most courageous of individuals, right? You're not going to necessarily be that guy, right? Um, Jupiter in the third, it can make one overly confident, overly faithful, in reaching success with the particular thing or whatever. You feel me? It can be overly confident in its own ability, but again, it lacks the work ethic. And like the Bible says, faith without works is dead, right? Jupiter wants to do right. The third house is a mixed nature house. So one theme of Jupiter in the third, it can realize, or it can bring confusion, because the person is like, damn, you feel me? If I if I do right, I'm also kind of doing wrong, or if I choose this, like both of them lead to some type of wrong, you feel me? So it can cause confusion in certain decisions, or choice making, especially if it's like on the dot, especially if it's last minute, you feel me? Confusion in the Dharma, right? When Jupiter's in the third, it can potentially blind the person, have them thinking that the wrong action or desire is actually the right thing to do. You feel me? The right thing to keep persisting at, or the right thing to keep going for, which can cause certain levels of entrapment or destruction, right? Jupiter, a sort of good thing, I guess. Jupiter here um, is fond of peaceful, mindful, and beneficial activities and hobbies, right? Beneficial mental stimulus and things of that nature, right? It doesn't necessarily just like to waste its time and attention on a lot of bullshit. Like it actually likes to consume, or likes to pay attention to things that uh, do have, I guess you could say, some sort of depth or some sort of benefit to it, right? Uh, Even if it's just Tai Chi, or not just Tai Chi, that's a great practice. Tai Chi, or playing chess, or whatever, right? Things that actually have a purpose to it. So this is a good quality of Jupiter in third, right? Um, Jupiter in the third, Jupiter here. You're intelligent. You could be a great giver of advice. You know, great in communication, great in your language or whatnot, right? But people might not necessarily respect you, or see you um, as strong of a wise person or intellectual as you really are, right? And the thing about Jupiter, Jupiter has a bit of an ego, right? He has a bit of an entitlement or whatnot, right? He wants to be seen in a certain light, right? Especially when the sun is connected to Jupiter in some way. So when Jupiter is in the third, the people that you can feel like you're teaching, or you can feel like, I'm putting this person on some type of game, but they might not necessarily take your advice seriously, and they might not necessarily take you seriously as a quote unquote guru or teacher. So this can irritate the ego of Jupiter as well, right? Um, Lessons of Jupiter in the third. First of all, every MKS position for every planet has the potential to operate in almost an exalted fashion, I believe, especially if you're able to overcome its challenges. Because it's like the MKS position, it forces the planet to go outside of its um, natural locks, right? And you got to think about it. All of the planets except Mercury are exalted outside of their own domicile, right? Like within your own house, you feel me? You can be comfortable, you can be at rest, you can perform the activities of this house in a efficient manner. But to become exalted, sometimes you must go outside of your own position. Sometimes you must go within the house of your own enemy, even, right? You know what I'm saying? Jupiter doesn't necessarily like Venus. They're damn near enemies, but Venus is exalted in the sign of Pisces, right? But yeah, when it comes to Jupiter, in the third, I feel like the lesson is to realize like some of the greatest spiritual progression can come from being immersed in worldly action, right? Meeting God with the world, right? As God is everywhere and in all things interconnected, the importance of Jupiter here is to release pride, to release hierarchy, the idea of this being more meaningful than that, or God being a certain type of lifestyle, and understand the wisdom and divinity in the third house activities, right? Understand self effort, friendship, competition, talking shit, fun, play, laughing, right? Taking karma into one's own hand, right? Programming your own reality, understanding and observing the small to see how it relates to certain things or to see how it relates to the laws, rather, right? The wisdom and lessons that come from Jupiter here having to put aside its own identity and learning in an unconventional way, learning in an uncomfortable way, learning in an uncomfortable environment, right? So Jupiter here, if it's able to grasp the lesson, it can be a very, you feel me, powerful and performative Jupiter for the person, right? You know what I'm saying? As with any MKS planet can do. But side note, so the Mahabharata and the Gita are very much so stories with a kind of a Jupiter in the third house type of signification and breaking the weakness of Jupiter in the third, right? So back then those guys they was very much centered on dharma, spirituality, righteous law, and all that and whatnot, right? And the Mahabharata war, it pretty much was taking place at the precipice or at the cusp of Kali Yuga, right? Dwapar Yuga and Kali Yuga, which that's a whole different. I ain't even gonna say that. Fuck what I even said just now, because I really feel like it took place in the Treta Yuga, and I'm not gonna get into that. I'm not on this video. That shit gonna piss me off. But either way, getting to what I was saying, Krishna himself, he had a debilitated Mars, Venus, and North Node in the third house. Um, Depending on what chart you use for him, of course, I feel like this is the more accurate chart that matches his life story. Um, but when it comes to Krishna understanding the functionalities of the third house in a strong manner, right? He had malefics in the third house, Mars and Rahu. He understands third house lessons for sure, right? So Krishna, he cheated and instructed the Pandava warriors to cheat multiple times throughout the Mahabharata war, right? God incarnate telling niggas to do wrong in order to do right, right? On multiple occasions, right? I believe Krishna himself, he even he stole a woman, like he stole a woman from a neighboring kingdom. Like he took her. She probably wanted him, you feel me, or whatnot. But he went against the rules. He went against law. He went against custom, and approaching the neighboring kingdom's king and or the father, and the rights of action and religious practice of marriage and all that extra shit and whatnot. Right? He bypassed that and just took her ass and whatnot. Right? Kidnapped her. Right? God in the flesh. Fuck the law, right? To get more specific, Krishna told Arjuna to defy the rules of war and to attack Buddheshwara when he was about to kill his comrade Satyaki, right? Um, he instructed Bhima to hit Duryodhana below the belt, in a battle with the mace, in the mace battle, right? Which is an illegal practice as well. Krishna made the sun disappear with a cloud illusion or whatnot, right? And brought it back to daytime or whatever, so that Arjuna could fulfill his vow and kill um, Jayadratha, right? He did a lot of different things, more things during this particular text or whatnot, in order for the Pandavas to be successful in their war efforts and whatnot, right? And the thing is, you got to understand the people that they was fighting, the Kauravas, they wasn't fair niggas in the first place. They were very much so agents of deception and destruction and trickery. And on a number of instances have attempted to murder, the Pandavas even before the war through deceptive practices and whatnot, right? And Krishna knew this. Krishna understood this. Being truthful, being righteous, being dharmic, abiding by the law amongst these niggas is a supreme weakness, which will lead to nothing but a dharma, which will surely lead to destruction and decapitation of the righteous persons and whatnot, right? He knew the niggas wasn't playing fair at all, and he took it into his hand to like even remind Arjuna at certain instances, like, dog, um, back to the fucking the Satyaki situation. Like he was saying, like, yo, this is your man's. You feel me? This is a nigga who would die for you on multiple occasions. Like, are you really going to let the enemy kill your motherfucking, like, your close comrade, your associate? Are you really gonna let this nigga die because of some rule or some motherfucking law or textbook that these niggas not even following? So the adaptation, adapting to the scenario. Fuck the law. Third house is the own dharma. You know what I'm saying? Like, it's right for my friend to live regardless of what these niggas gotta say. They not even playing by the rules anyway. It's right to use deceptive practices amongst agents of deception. You know, and I feel like this particular story is very much so showing the signification of third house action. Krishna himself, even as an avatar, with him having Mars, North Node, and Venus in the third house. But this is pretty much all I got for Jupiter MKS. Velocity.